With AI at our fingertips these days, it's so easy to ask AI about everything, even your spiritual experiences. But should you do this? Are there benefits and are there potential risks to this? About a year ago, I was going through a lot of changes in my spiritual development, and I had been encountering a lot of symbols in real life and in dreams. And these symbols, I kept coming across bees, right? Bees would fly by my head, or a bee would land by me or land on my hand. And also, out of nowhere, I saw a white crane while driving in the middle of nowhere on the freeway. And as AI was getting very popular at that time, I decided to ask AI about it. And of course, the crane and bees have very deep symbolic meanings. And so it made all these connections for me, and I started asking it about my dreams, and it started connecting all these dots for me and led me down basically a big rabbit hole. And the funny thing is that after I had inquired about these symbols, they kind of just stopped happening. And so around this time also, I was reading something from Rudolf Steiner, and he talks about how as beginner occultists, we should never talk about our spiritual experiences. And he mentions this because he says that when we do talk about our experiences, we necessarily have to formulate our concepts into words. And when we do so, we form concepts around what we experience. And as such, we define it. And if we're a beginner and we're not sure exactly what the experience meant, but we try and we define it, we risk misinterpreting it, right? So he says that we should not talk about them, keep them private, and that there's other ways to tell if you are actually progressing on your spiritual development. So I think there's a connection here. On the one hand, you have AI, which has access to so much information. It can make so many connections for us and basically give us the knowledge from all the past religions and everything. It's all on the internet. So it can connect a lot of dots and tell us a lot. On the other hand, you have 100-year-old advice from Rudolf Steiner that talks about keeping these spiritual experiences private. So that's what I want to talk about today. What are the risks and what are the pros of uploading or asking ChatGPT or AI to be your guide, asking it about your spiritual experiences? Are there risks to doing it? What can you gain from it? And what would an occultist like Rudolf Steiner say in today's day and age? So, have you ever had a mystical experience? And upon coming back down to earth from that experience, you feel a sense of inadequacy, right? During the experience, you were in such a state of flow that you understood the truth, you understood something, and you grasped it so consciously that you had no doubt that you'd be able to express this truth when you came back from your experience. But only to find that when you do come back, you're somehow blocked or unable to express your truth, right? Well, I've had the same thing many, many times. And so we were once entirely spirit. And in order to go through the earthly schooling, we materialized and we densified into physical bodies. And we grew brains so that we could perceive with our senses of the material world. And as we were able to perceive matter more and more strongly, we were able to perceive of the spirit less and less. And at the height of this materialism, our brains, we took what was inside our brains and we externalized it even further. Man took what was in his mind and his soul and he made the machine. It's a further densification and materialization of our thoughts put into machines. And so if machines are just the externalization of our thoughts, and our thoughts are already tied to the senses, which are tied to our physical brains, then machines are actually unable to have spiritual experiences. But we can. We can have spiritual experiences when we remain in thinking that is not bound to the senses. It's called sense-free thinking. But if you go and you ask AI immediately about all your spiritual experiences, you're outsourcing the experience. So everything originates from spirit, and it's on the spiritual plane. Every action, every thought. And so when a thought is happening, it's happening on the spiritual or mental plane. And as such, the thought is on the mental plane, but we as humans on the physical plane, we intercept and interpret that thought, and we identify with it, and we think that we thought that thought. But in fact, it's just our physical brains are interpreting it and making it conceivable on the physical plane, what was once on the mental plane. And every once in a while, when we are not perceiving it on the physical plane, but perceiving it on the mental plane, that's what we call a spiritual experience or a download. And you're probably wondering, can we do this intentionally? Of course you can. We can train ourselves to think of a thought, but let it perceive it on the mental plane. But if you ask AI immediately about all your spiritual experiences, you're literally outsourcing the work. And you're outsourcing the work to something that is less capable of it than you are, because a machine doesn't even have the soul composition to have spiritual experiences, but you do. Okay? So you might be wondering, do I think you should ask AI about your spiritual experiences? No, I don't, because it's less capable of having spiritual experiences than you are. In fact, it has no capability to do it. And spiritual experiences are very subtle, right? So you may only have a certain spiritual experience once in your life. And if you're going to outsource that, you may never be able to actually work through it and understand the meaning of it, because you go to AI and AI interprets it for you, and you're like, okay, cool. So on to the next one, right? Because you go down these rabbit holes after it starts making these connections for you. It's all very interesting. Trust me, I've been there and I've done that. But I just don't think it's quite worth it. So how do we engage in this sense-free thinking? Well, Rudolf Steiner gave a very powerful method for it. It's basically when you refrain from thinking on the physical plane and you perceive of a thought on the mental plane. And you just perceive of that thought as it is and how and where it originated from, which is on the mental or the spiritual plane. Okay, so a powerful method he gives for this is the backwards review. Every evening, once per day, you do a backwards review of the events of that day. Starting from the evening, you go backwards in reverse order and you try to make it all the way to the morning. In this way, you're breaking that logical sequential thought process that we usually have, which is a sense-bound perception, and you're breaking that habit of thinking. Because logical sequential thought is bound to the senses of our physical brain. So by going in reverse order, you're breaking that train of thought, and you're training your thoughts to be a little bit more loose and not constrained to time, which is also a sense-bound perception. In the beginning, you might not get very far with this, but keep going, because you'll find that you get better and better at remembering certain segments of your day very good in reverse order. And this also trains another part, which is sort of double duty for this exercise. As you start to get better at seeing certain parts of the day in reverse order, you are able to actually watch yourself go in reverse order, and it becomes sort of like a movie. So you watch yourself more objectively, and you start non-identifying with yourself in these moments. And that also detaches your identity to the thought, which is a sense-bound perception. So just to wrap it up, do I think you should tell AI about all your spiritual experiences? No, because machines are just an externalization of our thought processes. And our thought processes are already at the point where they're very sense-bound to the physical brain to go through the earthly schooling of materialism. And so you're outsourcing the work, you're outsourcing the experience to something less capable of perceiving the spiritual than you are. And what do I think our mystics of the past would say about AI? I think they would have said something along the lines of, you should probably not do it. Keep your experiences to yourself, even if your experience doesn't bear fruit for years. I mean, you can have an experience and you can sit on that experience, let it work through you. I think that's what Rudolf Steiner would have said. Let that experience work inside of you, and when the time comes and something happens in your life, maybe in the future, you will actually understand why that experience happened to you before. So you let that experience work inside you. Your soul is always perceiving these things. You just have to be sensitive enough and you have to be patient enough. And don't outsource the work to something less capable of it than you are. I think that's it for this one. Appreciate you watching, and until next time.